Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. With you, as always, I'm co-manager over at hammerandrails.com, Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey. Can it please stop snowing, Bartley?
Casey is weak, folks.
Mhm.
I just returned to the state of Indiana from the East Coast, where we've got basically one day of real snow in about a dozen years. There's not even 3 inches of snow on the ground, and you would think there was a blizzard if you listened to Casey.
Are you setting me up for some kind of 3 inch joke? Because there is definitely more than There was 3 inches, and we just got more.
That's what he tells everyone, but it's definitely less than it's less. I promise. I can look out
So
the
the
window
answer
right now.
was yes, you set me
I,
up for
I
this.
guess. I guess.
Perfect.
So we're here, of
Boiler
course, to talk Purdue.
upload.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always forget that. Rivals
Well,
Network.
it's not like the
Unimportant.
site pays your money or anything.
Nope.
Um, so we're here obviously to talk Purdue basketball. If you'll recall, last time we spoke, Casey said Purdue would go on a 6-game win streak. They've gone through 5 games in a row, margin of victory of, I believe, just about 22 points. So he's right on so far. One game remaining in that, and the next one is going to be at Washington. So hopefully, assuming there's no travel mishaps or problems there, I would think, Casey, you're going to be right on. So, kudos to you. I questioned you when you said that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. I think for the 425th season in a row, the middle and bottom of the Big Ten has been overrated, overfeared. I think the cliche that every game in the Big Ten is tough uh, carries a little more water than it should. I don't believe even road games at Minnesota are what we should classify as tough.
I mean, Purdue struggled for a little bit in that game against Minnesota.
Purdue struggled.
Yeah,
Purdue struggled. Um, they probably played the worst 20 minutes of the season, but it was Minnesota, so they were still like tied at half.
right,
They're just. I think it's becoming clear there is an upper tier in the Big Ten,
right.
and these last 5 games proved. I think that Purdue is certainly in that, and there were honestly before the 5 games, we weren't sure that was the case.
Right.
Looking back, obviously Purdue has gotten better, and that'll be a big part of what we talk about all session today. But it definitely seems like that schedule kind of highlighted some things that maybe weren't as big of an issues as they were. Purdue's made some improvements, but the benefit of making a non-conference the way Purdue did, that non-conference schedule is tougher than
Brutal.
most of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean Auburn, Alabama, Marquette. I mean, even if you just look at those three, it's not even including Texas A&M and Ole Miss. I mean, those three are just top tier games. They're all ranked in the top 10 right now. Purdue went 1-2 in those games, so it's not as if they took care of all their business. But I think Matt Painter's philosophy with teams of the last probably decade or so, more so I guess in the last 5 years, is he wants to challenge you in the non-conference. He wants to figure out how opponents are going to come after you, and then he needs to see what his team needs to improve upon, and then he can implement that.
Right. Yeah, and I do think when you're talking change, it's good that there's a logical, like, something actually did change, and that was part of
Right.
the explanation. It's not just like, oh, they're on a hot streak for 4 weeks
Yeah.
or whatever.
Somebody locked in on defense, like,
Yes.
and yeah, that's part of it. But Purdue made lineup changes, and it goes back to I think two things you were texting me about. Purdue playing two bigs at the same time who can play with each other and complement each other, but also just the insertion of CJ Cox has really kind of shown what he's capable of most recently in the game against Nebraska. So do you want to talk Caleb first, or do you want to talk CJ Cox first?
I think first deserves the nod.
Okay.
Um, if you're talking about, I think they work hand in hand a lot because they do, they've both really helped on the defensive end. But I
Sure.
do think the philosophy change has come at the behest of playing Caleb first. Painter talked about this after the win against Nebraska. They are playing a little bit of a different style defense. In general, we think of Purdue as a drop defense because
Yeah.
of, I like the way Painter phrases it, because of our ultimate size. It sounds like a Marvel lineup, like you're like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the ultimate size. Um, but that's what like Purdue's defense has been anchored on. Obviously, Zach Edey over the last 4 years before this. I think even with Jacobson a little bit, like the idea was you have a really big guy, you want him to seal off the paint, and you want him to kind of get back, don't get burnt, don't let guys get to the
Yeah.
rim. But when you're talking about Trey Kaufman and Caleb first, the best thing they do, Trey honestly is very underrated in this aspect. But both of their ability to play against guards, to guard out on the perimeter, to not need to drop. And I thought Painter was really good about breaking down what it changes because when you drop, it's safer, but when you beat it, you're like there are angles, and like we've seen, Will Berg struggled with this really early on in the
Oh,
season.
well, yeah.
Raleigh Burgess, one of the things he struggles with most when he's out there is just it's hard to close off those angles when you're back like that. You're giving some space to cutters,
Hmm.
and it's easier to get to that stuff because the pressure is not there. Now, when they bring those bigs out, when they switch, when they're getting hands everywhere, yes, it can ultimately break down a little more because you have more guys out, but it's harder to get to that stuff just as a ball handler, as anyone out on the perimeter. And we've seen it. Purdue is forcing turnovers now. I think
Right.
it was 9 in the first half against Nebraska. I think it was like 14 against Rutgers on the road. I think it was 12. It might have been 14. A ton of turnovers against Rutgers.
Right.
It's not easy to play offense against Purdue, which is not something we've even the last couple of years. It's like it's not easy to score at the rim or be inside the paint because Zach Edey's
Right.
there.
But
But it didn't feel like
you
teams struggled.
no, I mean people were still raining threes on Purdue in a lot of games, and it always seemed like it was at least for Purdue fans, that we interacted with on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever, was always, oh, there's the nameless guy from our opponent who's going to hit
Mhm.
four threes on us. And, Purdue might still win by 15, 20 points,
Right.
but there was always going to be this one guy who just drove you mad because he's barely on the scouting report and then he hits four threes. Because Painter would be like, well, look, he's not a good shooter. He's not a volume guy. If he makes those, good for him. But we're not going to let guy number one, guy number two, guy number three beat us. We're going to, stop them and let the surrounding players beat him. And that worked very well over the last few years. Um, you talk about a change in defensive philosophy. What exactly? I mean, I know you talked about Caleb First's ability to play out on guards or out on the wing and not just stay in the paint, but what has changed in Caleb First game from what we saw, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where he could barely be on the court? He wasn't earning the playing time, and then all of a sudden he had a one or two good games from the bench, and then Painter's like, all right, I got to just give this guy as many minutes as he can handle. Now he's a starter, and now he seems like an indispensable part of this team.
Yeah.
Is there any way to explain that?
We we've spent some time talking to Caleb and kind of asked him that after the Rutgers game, and he does kind of follow the party of line. Another one of Painter's Painterisms. Hard to be consistent with inconsistent minutes. I
Yeah,
think there's definitely that. I think when you watch First over his career, I don't think confidence has been consistent. His role's also been very up and down. I mean, he's been surprising in small minutes, jumped into the starting lineup out of nowhere, got taken out almost not because of anything he did, but because, Mason Gillis was a better fit with the offense, with Zach Edey. I think it's a lot. If there's anyone that's benefited, this is, you know, we're way too on the Edie was too much this or not enough this take. But if there's anyone that's benefited from not having Edie on the floor, I think it's Caleb because he exists in that tiny spot. It changes the defensive scheme, and he's allowed to kind of be the rover and everything he does well is starting to show. I do think a lot of it is just playing more,
Yeah.
knowing that
You got a longer leash.
exactly he knows he can make a mistake now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's ever been a case in his career because Mason Gillis was always there to be like,
Right.
well, you're
Breathing
not
down his
cutting it right
neck.
now. Boom. And especially when you play the way Caleb First does. And there are just certain, like, we talk about it, the misses at the rim, whatever else. Those things
What
can,
did you, somebody on Twitter called them loud misses?
Joe
You
Jackson, yeah.
adopted that? Yeah. Joe
Very
Jackson.
loud misses, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you kind of just combined all those things, I think he's just in a good spot. And then I think his game just really meshes with everyone else, especially now that Purdue has a couple perimeter guys that kind of go play that pressure with him. So
Yeah.
he's not just one of five out there. There are now 4 or 5 guys on the floor at all times that play the same long, fast, get into him, get into passing lanes. Like I think just this style of play both needs him to work, but also works for him.
Yeah. I think one aspect of his game that we haven't even mentioned yet has been the rebounding that he's brought to this team. This Purdue team has, without Zach Edey, without a guy who, you're basically guaranteed was going to get 10 to 12 rebounds a game, has struggled. They've been out rebounded by a number of opponents this season. But Caleb First, once he's been put into that starting lineup and he's getting those minutes, I mean, he's grabbing 5, 6 rebounds a game. And even if he doesn't get the rebound, he's in there. He's crashing the
Yeah.
glass. He's going after the ball. He's tipping it around. He's being aggressive. And I mean, him and Braden Smith are probably the two most aggressive rebounders on this team. And it is strange to say that about Braden Smith, a guy who is, listed generously at 6 foot tall, to be one of your top two. But I think First's ability to crash the glass and just have a constant motor to go after rebounds
Right.
is something that this team was missing without him.
Yeah, and it's an identity thing and it's a like
Yeah.
addictive quality to have on the court. Like when you see
Mhm.
someone run like that, all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I can go get rebounds too." I think him
Yeah.
and CJ both, to be honest, have that same just
Sure.
motor go get the ball thing. So once again you're not just adding one guy with that quality. You've got exponential growth both on the rebounding and defensive end. And yeah, Caleb just he moves so well for as big as he is.
hmm
And
you watch him, you forget how big that he is
yeah,
because it's not that he doesn't play big, but he plays like, not like a guard, but closer to a guard
he
than I think
slouched
any other
down
big
like
Purdue
he's in
has.
athletic positions, like he's pretty low when he plays. I mean, some big dudes just like don't look like they can even get to an athletic position. And Caleb just plays that way. Like he
Yeah.
plays, yeah, 6'7", hunched over a little, and then he goes up.
Right, right. So, anything else about Caleb First? I think then we'll take a break, come back, talk about CJ Cox.
I think Caleb's doing a lot better job of figuring out when he has mismatches on offense. Obviously, the dunk against Rutgers, like right in his face. But like when you have that much movement and that much shooting around, you're gonna get random bits where you're just like you got a small guy on you and just like
hmm
go throw his ass down in the paint.
Yeah,
And he's doing that pretty aggressively. I like talk about someone who like you weren't certain what you were getting for 10 minutes a night, and now he's
right.
just giving you a solid 30.
Yeah,
That's you're adding on like 25 minutes of production just at one spot on both ends of the floor. So like we're going to be talking about like Purdue's made a major jump. We probably should touch on that right after the break. Just how much of a jump Purdue has made in the last 3 weeks
yeah,
because it's been seismic, and that jump is in a large part because you're getting 25 to 30 A+ minutes from the power forward now.
yeah, yeah. So let's take a break. We can talk about Purdue's improvement overall, but also the improvement of true freshman CJ Cox. We'll be right back. And we are back. So I'm going to look at the improvement of true freshman CJ Cox. He, came into the starting lineup along with Caleb First when Painter really decided that there needed to be a change. And we talked earlier in the year about how we were impressed with what CJ Cox could do as far as shooting the ball, kind of a different player than Purdue had on the roster, but also his defensive intensity was really good from the jump for a true freshman in the Big Ten. Um, what do you think it was that pushed him into the starting lineup, and how has he taken advantage of those minutes now that he is, like Caleb First, it has more leash, has more opportunity to be consistent?
Yeah, I think it's Matt Painter knows what he found with Lance Jones last year, and that is a third short quick guard with Braden Fletcher. And pretty sure the national title game season proved that was probably the best way to play.
Right.
Fair to say.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the year, he still thought that. He just thought it was Jakari that gave him
Mhm.
the best opportunity for it. Jakari wasn't making shots. His defense was a little uneven. It's really like CJ Cox has been the better freshman, certainly consistently wise from the first of the season to now. His shot making is there. And I do think it's just, he is the perfect mix of can get his own shot, can knock down open shots, move like cuts really well, cuts really hard. He moves fast and hard and purposeful on the court. And that opens things up for Braden. It opens things up for Trey. It gives relief valves ever, and then it gets another option when you need someone to break something down in the last second. And then you add his defense, which is he is annoying. He is a clamp. He's strong. He's got great hands. He's always attentive. He's definitely been the better one-on-one defender than Jakari Harris. I think Jakari has a little more tools, a little more speed. I think he has a higher ceiling defensively, but he's just not been as locked in focus wise, gets lost off the ball a little. CJ's just on you. He's a like Wolverine, just claws into you at all times. It's not fun to play him. And then at the other end, like you're worried about Braden Smith, you're worried about Trey Kaufman Wren, and now you've got this guy that's just dropping 23 and
Yeah.
does it in a flurry. And he's shown that he can score at the rim. He can get there off ball. He can make shots off the dribble. He's good in transition. He doesn't make mistakes. True freshman that's just not making mistakes out there. It's just it finds a happy balance in Purdue's offense. It gives him a lead point on defense. And yeah, it's been perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way the offensive production was against Nebraska was sort of like the ideal way for this Purdue offense to run, because you had Braden Smith. I think he only had 8 points in that game, but he had 14
Correct.
assists. Lawyer was hitting threes. Trey Kaufman Wren was hitting that little runner in the lane that is very hard to stop with his size and his speed.
I have never seen any big dude who's taken heat check floaters.
How many times did he take that in that Rutger or in that Nebraska game?
The
There's
and
at
one
least
one
four, I
for
think.
sure. Yeah, the and one was a heat check because he just caught it and like tossed it up and got
Yeah.
fouled. Then he takes the floater from beyond the free throw line. I take that shot co-rec, and you know why? It's because I'm not 6'10". I can't run real quick. I don't jump up into the rim. It's just like I'm going to do it. He's out here doing it in D1 basketball in a real Big Ten game and
You
just
take it
flushing
almost
it.
for opposite reasons.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
he's fast and he
Yeah.
can shoot it. You're
Yeah.
slow and like
Yeah.
this is the best I can
And he's
do.
just like, I got it. I'm going to do it. You can't stop. And it's so unguardable because of the way Braden works, because of the way Braden gets on the ball in that short roll, because of the way, like, every other option is terrible. You're either leaving a 3-point shooter wide open, you're
Yeah.
leaving a dunker spot wide open. You're just like, okay, take this 10-footer. Oh, God, you're Steph Curry from like floater range. Like, this is insane.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
mean,
such a weird, just, I don't know how we're going to explain him to our grandkids. Your grandkids. I'm not going to have grandkids. Your grandkids.
yeah, I know often I'll be sitting around in front of the fire
I
with a
guarantee
glass
you
of
will. Yes.
brandy.
Oh,
I remember back in 2025, there was a
floaters and
player,
the
Trey
flippity
Kaufman
flops.
Wren. Didn't understand him. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the way the offense played with Lawyer out there hitting threes, and then you add in CJ Cox. I think he hit his first 6 shots. Um,
Eight.
first 8 shots.
Eight
Okay,
of
I
eight for
know.
20 points before a miss.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Um, And it was just absolutely everything you want to see out of the Purdue offense. And keep in mind, this was against a Nebraska defense who, according to Ken Palm, was 14th
14th coming into the game.
going into the game. Yeah, of course we knocked him down a little bit when you score 104 on him, but it makes a difference. So the insertion of Cox and First has been huge. But before we get to the overall improvement of this Purdue team, stop it. We have to talk about Braden Smith over the last 5 games. Over the last 5, he's averaged 20 points, 11.4 assists, and a 4.8 assist to turnover ratio.
That's the ticket.
According to Cobra Stats on Twitter, he is the only player since 2008 to average that over a 5-game stretch in his career.
Jeez.
I mean, that is just unbelievable, the production that he has had. And
Yeah,
I attribute it all to the pink shoes.
Sure. It does. He is a player that just looks weird when he's wearing just like black shoes. Like it's disappointing.
He needs that pop.
Yeah. Yeah, his assist rate has dropped down to 18%. It is the highest in the nation, or his turnover rate.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, 18%. His assist rate is up to 47.8%. Highest in the nation. Half of his possessions are ended on an assist.
That is wild.
Wild. He's up to 5th best player on Ken Palm now. Yeah, it turns out, I think we both quietly were a little disappointed with Braden Smith's start.
Oh, sure.
And now we're getting it.
This is what we wanted all year. I mean,
yeah.
I think we saw the way he played the last 2 seasons, and just his bursting onto the scene as a true freshman point guard on this Purdue team that was very good, expected to do good things, was unbelievable. And we really wanted to see that jump into his junior season. But I mean, he played well, don't get me wrong, but I think he was suffering from our high expectations. And now he's meeting and exceeding those expectations.
And honestly, I don't think it started with his passing. I think because it was, I believe, the Toledo game that he went crazy, right?
Yes. Yeah, he scored 34, something like
34, yeah. So I think a switch flipped in that Toledo game where he's talked about it. Everyone's thought we need him to score more.
Yeah.
And we need him to look for a shot more aggressively. And I think since that Toledo game, he's found the happy balance of really the pull-up 3. I think he was always pretty good at taking 3s when he needed to. But now by being aggressive in the mid-range, it opens things up. It pulls more attention. It makes his job a little easier. And I just think him shooting the ball is good for Purdue.
Yeah.
He's going to make a lot of them. And I think that just helps everyone else on the floor. I think CJ does help him a lot. I think Caleb helps him a lot too, because I think I'm always impressed by Caleb and Braden's 2-man game. It's a little different than the TKR one because Caleb First is just like a bullet going to the rim, gets a lot of foul calls that way. But also when you have 2 guys out there setting screens, moving around, I just think everything is coalescing in a way. Also, at some point, we need to talk about Fletcher Lawyer just being a heat-seeking missile at this point.
In what sense?
Just making everything. He doesn't miss anymore if he's open. Maybe ever. I'm not sure the last time he missed.
He was 1 for 6 in the Rutgers game.
Didn't
from 3,
like
I'm pretty sure.
Didn't feel like it.
I mean, I don't care what it felt like. That was just a fact. But I was trying to pull up what he's shooting this year from 3.
He's closing in on, I believe it's 46% now, 48.6%. Is that good? Almost 50-50?
Seems good.
50-50? On 100
Yeah.
in Nope, 72 3-point attempts. Braden Smith has 108 3-point attempts.
That's crazy.
Leads the team by a large margin.
I mean, by
108.
comparison, last year, the entire season, Fletcher Lawyer had 142 3-point attempts.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that just shows you the volume at which Braden Smith is shooting right now. And it's working. It's
yep.
working.
Almost 42% from three. So, like, and Fletcher or CJ is up to 44%. So now you have three elite bombers from three. And I do think there's a difference between it being a Fletcher was a okay 3-point shooter his freshman year. Sophomore year, he was a really good 3-point shooter. This year, I feel like he's upped an even level and he's just elite. Making tough shots on him. And you feel that way about Braden off the dribble. And now you throw CJ in there who's like, as a freshman already 19 of 42 from three and very limited minutes. Like
Right.
it's not hard to envision how this team has gone from just a couple weeks ago, they were closer to 40s in the Ken Palm rating. They are now down to 12. Their defense was in the 80s, now down to 42. Offense still just ninth in the country. Um, but yeah, just an all around jump. Braden Smith is obviously the go go battery, but like we're sitting here and like Painter's found his rotation, and
Mm-hmm.
this has all mostly happened without Miles Colvin and Camden Heide doing anything besides being solid on defense and rebounding the ball. Good things. Those the other three guys stepping up means don't really need as much from them.
Yeah.
And then Jakari Harris is now playing well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it, we've seen through this season and mostly, the last, we'll go back 5, 6, 7 games, a drastic improvement. And I think three players that's uh, Caleb First, CJ Cox, and Braden Smith. And that alone is enough to elevate Purdue to a different level, give them a different ceiling. And, as you always like to discuss, it raised their floor also. If these guys are playing the way they are capable of and the way we've seen, it's no longer just, well, Purdue will get into the NCAA tournament, maybe make the second weekend. It's like they've got the elite guys who, if they play the way they did against Nebraska, if they play the way they did, against Rutgers, then you're talking like we talked last episode. You don't have to be the perfect team to make the Final Four. You have to have good players who can get hot at the right time. And Purdue certainly has those. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see Braden Smith have a game or an NCAA tournament like Carson Edwards had. I mean, he is capable of just saying, you know what, F this, I'm going to do it myself and take 8 threes and make 6 of them. I mean, nothing is out of the realm of possibility, I think, for these guys on this team.
Kind of feel like Purdue has three guards capable of doing that now.
Yeah, any given day.
Like Fletcher's going to drop 20 damn near every night. CJ now is like he scored more points, I believe, in that game than Carson Edwards had as a freshman in any game.
Wow.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, that's high praise.
Um, it's getting like, and honestly, I thought Jakari Harris in the last couple games have been great. His shot's starting to fall.
Yeah, he's doing good on defense.
Three of six on three, but yeah, his defense has gotten a lot better.
He's more active on defense. I mean, he was jumping in front of passes. Same with Cox, but he was jumping in there, getting steals, and then taking care of the ball afterward. Making the right choice.
Yeah, and like Harris, 11.8% turnover rate. Obviously, he doesn't have to do a ton for the offense, but like guards turn the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
He has not. And I think there's an elite playmaker lurking inside of him. He's had a couple nice passes. He dribbles the ball well. I'm starting to like. I felt not good about this team 4 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I
I think
thought,
that's fair for most people.
yeah, I thought their defensive attentiveness, the way they were playing, I didn't think the energy was there. And then I think really it's the Northwestern game for me that does it. Just their attention to detail on defense, their energy, even in the practice beforehand, they were just very go, 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 very loud, very, there's a lot of joy back on the court, it seems. And it's, it's been almost a flawless 120 straight minutes. If
Yeah.
you're talking about what you need to do to play really well in the NCAA tournament, got to string like 4 games together.
Hmm. Yeah.
Not easy to do, and they've proven in the last 5 that they can.
Yep. For sure. For sure. So, anybody else you want to highlight about this recent kind of, flip up a level in this Purdue basketball team, or any game ahead you want to talk about before we head out for the day?
I mean, I think the Oregon game now looks fascinating.
Yeah.
Obviously, all this talk kind of goes out the window if Purdue loses at Washington because Washington's not a good football team or not a good basketball team.
If the basketball team if they play a football game, even against Washington, I think they'll lose.
Um, and so for those that don't know, the Utah State coach, Danny Sprinkle, who Purdue played in the NCAA tournament, he took the Washington job this
Right.
offseason. Great Osabar, remember the name?
I do.
He's back. He's with Washington now. Um, but Washington is not a good basketball team.
Yeah,
Not,
and didn't Purdue beat Utah State by like 100 points in that game?
yeah, it was the Trey Kaufman game. It's the one where
Yeah.
Edie was like on the bench, like, we don't need you, big boy.
Yeah,
You rest
take a
up.
breather.
We'll take you
Yeah, you got
next.
more
Yeah, we
important
got you.
games.
Yeah. Um, Washington really struggles to get stuff going on offense. Not
Yeah.
They're a really ISO dependent team. Osabar down on the post, which will be interesting to watch. Trey and Caleb been a little bit of foul trouble recently,
Yeah.
but really you're circling that Oregon game.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
Purdue headed to Oregon Saturday night. I assume it's on Saturday. Um,
It's Saturday afternoon. It is
weird,
3 p.m. Eastern time. It is
weird.
it's the NBC Peacock game. So
Whoa!
they want a little something in the afternoon. So we're on
Oh,
NBC.
we
Yeah.
made it, Mom. We're on the cock.
Well, nope.
Ah,
Uh, it's such a contrast because we Purdue plays Washington on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m.
right.
Eastern on Big Ten Network. So, going to be quite the contrast between those two start times.
Yeah. And then you're talking about a 3 game home span where Purdue gets to lay claim to the Big Ten if they do. They get Ohio State at home, whatever. Then they get Michigan and Indiana. Obviously, there's the one Michigan State game lurking in the middle of February on the road,
Right.
but Purdue gets 2 shots at Michigan,
Got to
and
take at least one of those.
you got to take the home game for sure.
Yeah.
But like you get past Oregon, you're looking at 7 games in a row, and then you got 3 home games following after. So
Yeah. I mean,
big time
if you can have
stretch.
that'd be a 10-game win streak if that happens, with 9 of those being Big Ten games. The
Mhm.
only one, obviously, not a Big Ten game was that game at home against Toledo. So it would be huge for Purdue's chances in the Big Ten, especially because Michigan and Michigan State, neither of them, as of this recording, have a Big Ten loss.
Right.
So if Purdue were to be able to give Michigan that first loss, and Michigan and Michigan State play each other twice, so there's going to be got to have 2 losses out of that somehow. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of who gets them.
If Purdue gets by Oregon and then they handle Michigan and Indiana, then they go on the road to Iowa. Those are not unwinnable games by any imagination.
No,
There's a world where they bring a 12 game win streak up to Ann
into
Arbor.
Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and then, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then Michigan State back to back to back. Purdue, obviously, this early in the season, you control your own destiny. It's just, it's weird that I don't remember. There's not many college teams that put 3 perfect games together in a row. And so we're sitting on this little edge of like, when is Purdue gonna look flawed again?
Right. Right.
And how does it look? And does it disrupt everything? Because I mean, they won 18 points on the road against Rutgers, shooting like 3 of 20 from 3.
Yeah.
like it hasn't really mattered. It's not been just like hot shooting. It's just been a total team domination, playing perfect ball for complete
Well,
games.
and they only allowed 50 points to
Yeah,
Rutgers on the road.
yeah.
So, I mean, you
They
allow
tell me
50
they have
points to your
lottery
opponent.
guys over there
Two of them I've heard.
too.
Uh, I mean, you look at, I know we mentioned this, but it's like versus Toledo, they allowed 64. At Minnesota, allowed 61. Versus
I would
Northwestern,
argue
61.
61 against Minnesota. Not great.
Well, sure, but it's still, I mean, still 61 points. It's not like
No.
they're filling it up. And then at Rutgers again, only allowed 50 points. At home against Nebraska, 68 points. Keep in mind, 68 points where
Braden,
a lot of walk-ons were in that game. A lot of guys who don't get a lot of minutes were in that game, and Purdue still allowed just 68 points.
Purdue didn't play a starter the last 8 minutes of that game. Braden Smith went out at like the 10-minute mark of that game.
Yeah. I'm sure he didn't know what to do with himself. I mean, he's used to playing like 36, 37, 38, 40
Right.
minutes. So,
Yeah, his legs are overworked, overtime,
yeah.
overrested.
Yeah. So, one final thing before we go. I did not talk to you about this beforehand, but Casey, John Cena is back. John Cena is back. What do we think? Is he going to win the Rumble?
Oh, I don't. Can you waste the Rumble on him?
It does seem like it would be a waste because
Like, I feel like he could just get a title shot.
Well, sure, but then you want him to lose in the Rumble, I think, and then you put him in Elimination Chamber in Toronto, and then he's got to fight through that. Maybe you have him lose there, and you have him build up to it.
John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, the final four in the Royal Rumble. The last four left in the ring. CM Punk.
Say it again.
CM Punk, John Cena, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre.
And Drew. Okay, so you got
the final
Reigns
four
going
in
out.
the ring.
You got Reigns going out before then.
Yeah, I just don't think there's so much juice in the squeeze there with Reigns.
I hope Drew takes him out. I want to see Drew take him out because I love Drew McIntyre. He's one of my favorites, and he's right. Wrestling and wrestling fans, the shortest memories of anybody. It's like this guy terrorizes everybody. Injures half the roster. I put injures in quotes if you're listening on the podcast. Comes back after being gone, and suddenly he's a good guy. It's like whoa. He tried to kill me, and six of my friends, and now all of a sudden you guys are cool with him. So,
and this is relevant because Royal Rumble in Indianapolis this year.
In Indianapolis, that's right.
Indiana
in about 2 weeks.
Event.
Yeah. So
exciting times.
I mean, we'll probably record again before then, but I know right now Casey does not have a ticket, but I know he was debating going. So it is the day after the IU game. So you can stay tuned here as we record our next episode for all your WWE hot takes, along with some Purdue basketball as we have time. So for Casey and myself, folks, thanks so much for watching and listening. Till next time.